I'm Heidi Hutner, and this is Coffee with Hx2. And today on our show, I'll be speaking with Bethany Wiggin, a professor from University of Pennsylvania. She's a founder of the Environmental Humanities program there, a professor of comparative lit and German. And I'm really interested in talking to her because she does what I do, and what we are working on in environmental humanities is actually quite new. And so we're kind of in this new world of what's happening in academia and how we're bringing together different disciplines, all addressing environmental issues. So welcome, Bethany. So great to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for having me.
So we are both working on utopic issues and a variety of environmental issues, but it was the utopia theme that brought us together. You'll be speaking later today at my university, at Stony Brook University. So tell me a little bit about how you made this shift from working on earlier period, right? So you talked to me about the Reformation, you started in the Reformation and earlier periods on literature. How did you shift from that to current environmental issues?
Right. So a large reason that I shifted had to do with student interests. I had some students who took some classes, historically based classes that I offered on religious utopias. And the more we thought through some of the readings that we were doing across the Atlantic world, German utopias, but also early English utopias, the Quaker tradition, which is of course a very transnational tradition, we started realizing together through these readings that Quaker teachings, for example, pietist teachings on plain and simple living spoke very powerfully to threads in sustainability discourses today. That was a while ago now that I started thinking through some of these issues and developed some teaching that brought these utopian histories really up to the present moment and addressing utopian writing and experiments, art practices, transnationally, but also with, as you said, I'm in Philadelphia, so we also are looking at Philadelphian projects in and along the rivers in particular.
And so Philadelphia is deeply rooted in Quaker tradition.
Of course, that's exactly right. And it is, you know, a very pluralistic Quaker tradition. It was from the outset meant to be a place where all brothers across language traditions and ethnicities were to love one another in that Quaker teaching kind of way. It's really been inspiring to be, I mean, it's kind of the locus genius of the place, right? That you know, Philadelphia's history is at once its, I think, greatest blessing, but also its greatest challenge. The city is constantly trying to live up to its utopian origins, and you can only ever fail to do that. And yet it has aspirations, I think, and this remembrance and this deep historical memory of what it means to be inclusive and to be just across race, across class, is a really powerful force.
And
gender, of course. Yes.
So some of the first, I think there's the first Christian religion to allow women to speak and have equality in the church.
Yes, these radical traditions, radical in the sense of radical Christian Protestant traditions, were very much pushing the limits of gender equality and really thinking about what it meant to be both the bride of Christ, and using that metaphorically in all kinds of pretty experimental ways.
Right, and some of the first abolitionists too.
Absolutely. So. It's the Quaker tradition is very inclusive, I would say.
So this simple living philosophy, so I'm teaching a class right now on utopianism. I know you've taught classes on utopianism, and I'm really interested in kind of us teasing out that issue, but I also want to move to the question of this programming that we're both doing with environmental humanities, because people ask me all the time, what is environmental humanities? So do you want to come up with your definition and we'll talk about it?
I can give you the definition that I use when I talk to people who are, you know, fundraising and things like that. And it's really, for me, a somewhat simple proposition. And it takes really seriously that we live in an age where humans are the single most powerful geomorphic or earth-shaping force. If that's the case, it's not enough to just study the earth via sciences. We also have to understand humans. And so for me, environmental humanities really brings those two discourses, sometimes called, you know, EP knows the two cultures, the sciences and the humanities together, to think in an integrated way about many of the grand challenges that we're faced today, of course, climate change being among them, but there are others, of course.
So in your program, do you have scientists and professors from the humanities together? They're working together. And how do they do that in a practical way?
So, well, we're working it out right now. I mean, we're a young program. We started as a pilot program. We were adopted pretty quickly by the School of Arts and Sciences, by the Dean's Office. This year is the first year we have a faculty working group. We have 24 faculty members who are, the majority are housed in arts and sciences, but Penn has, in fact, 12 colleges or 12 schools within the university, and some of our faculty members are from the School of Architecture and Design, the Annenberg School of Communications, the School of Medicine, the Law School, and the Wharton School of Business. So we have this robust sort of interdisciplinary conversation. Last week, in fact, we're talking at the beginning, relatively the beginning of a semester. Last week was this year's first meeting of the faculty working group, and we paired a faculty member who is a geophysicist together with somebody who works in English and media studies. And they both were talking about, we put them together to have, they talked individually about their work, and then about how their work on what we called environmental surveillance or monitoring, how they could speak to one another across disciplinary paradigms.
So do you see this as something, I mean, one of the critiques people have of the academy is that we discuss things and we look at things and we do all this analysis, but we don't necessarily make changes. Right? So do you see this as something that will do that and connect with the community outside and the world outside the ivory tower, or is it something that will be more of a critical discussion that's a think tank?
Yeah, no, I think one of the questions that we're grappling with, and I'm grappling with a lot in my own work, is this translation into policy. And I'm not a policymaker, and I don't actually, that's not my set of strengths, that's not my skill set. Where I feel like I can reach larger audiences is actually through arts engagement projects. I'm working really closely with a climate scientist and atmospheric chemist at Drexel, Pete DiCarlo. Drexel University is right next to Penn. We're both in the same watershed. We're both downwind from the same refinery. We both, so we together have really been coming up with joint citizen science, but also citizen humanist projects to really activate and engage publics who, these are both private universities, for reasons of income and whatever, are not on our campus, but also because they're not college students. They're school-age kids, they're retirees, they're whoever, who's interested in being on the Schuylkill River, one of Philadelphia's two major rivers. And we have a wonderful community partnership with Bartram's Garden and the 12,000 school-age students who visit America's oldest historic botanical garden every year. So in that way, we're finding through these citizen projects and arts outreach projects, science outreach projects, we're finding real ways to engage audiences in a way that's beyond just academics sitting together in our faculty working group. But those partnerships take a long time and a lot of trust, really, to build up. I talk a lot with my colleagues in the faculty working group, but certainly also with the many community partners who we work with, that these relationships are really based on trust, because the infrastructures for those relationships, we're only starting to put them into place. One of the things I think environmental humanities has done in its short life really well is to think about scholarship and public engagement and how that works. But it's not something that academics are traditionally great at doing.
Right.
We're not.
Right.
So we need our community partners who do engage with audiences to really be trusting to take us on as partners and to help us develop the kind of language and programs that make sense for audiences that they already have, or we can also help to build.
So I know you also had a fellowship at the Rachel Carson Center in Germany, and of course I'm thinking about Rachel Carson and that tradition and how important she is to the work that you're doing, that I do. What was that experience like to be at the Rachel Carson Center?
Right. Well, the Rachel Carson Center is a really interesting place. Technically, I was actually at the Center for Advanced Studies and was also affiliated faculty or affiliated fellow with the Rachel Carson Center. I was there at the invitation of the director, Christoph Mauch. It's an interesting place to be. It's primarily historians, but of course people who work across other fields as well. It's one of the few places where people who are coming from really international contexts are there. So at the time that I was there, there was a legal scholar from India, there were legal scholars from Argentina, there were historians from Australia, from China. So in terms of a place where global discourses about what we mean when we talk about the environment, where that kind of rich exchange is happening, it's a tremendous place to be.
So we have to wrap up, but final words about this new model of education and of study, this environmental humanities. It is a new term, and they're cropping up all over the U.S. and in other places. My colleagues, many of them scientists, say, what is that? I know you just gave a great explanation. Do you see this as something that's going to continue to grow, that are going to continue to expand in campuses across the U.S.?
I do think that they're going to continue to expand. I think ineluctably so. I think that it's become very clear that the structures of knowledge we have on campus right now are not adequate to really meet the challenges that we face. And as we think about what it means to face the 6th grade extinction, ocean acidification, we are going to have to find more and increasing ways of bringing different skill sets and knowledge bases together to really address them.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do at the University of Pennsylvania, and we're growing that here at Stony Brook University as well. So we'll be in conversation, I'm sure.
Super. I look forward to it. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you. So that was Coffee with H2, our conversation with Bethany Wiggin, a professor at University of Pennsylvania, really doing incredible work with environmental humanities, and we hope to have you back sometime. More shows are on my website, HeidiHutner.com. Thanks.